Give yourself 6 months and look at the change that's going to happen. And yeah, we've been talking about starting early, and those of us that have are, like I said, I'm seeing results. But guess what? It's never too late to start. Right? Andy Priscilla talks about this a lot. It's one day or day one, your choice. Make today day one.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Grit Meets Growth podcast, where we bring you inspiration and insights focused on getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. If you enjoy the messages you're hearing here, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of the podcast. With that, let's get after it.
Here we are, the end of 2023. We made it through another one. Get ready for the next one. I don't know about you, but been doing some soul searching, some review of past goals in the past year a little bit, and really getting ready for an exciting 2024. I'm excited about where things are headed for me personally in 24. Feel like my workouts have been spot on. We were just having that conversation. Started that, about 3 months ago, and man, I haven't felt better going into a new year in a long time. So super excited.
It's good when you can start the new year already feeling good. Like you got a head start. We've been talking about that for the last handful of episodes. Don't wait until January 1st to start. By the time you hear this, it'll be past January 1st. So again, there's no time like the present to start. So
that's right. Put in the work, man. Give yourself 6 months and look at the change that's going to happen. And yeah, we've been talking about starting early, and those of us that have are, like I said, I'm seeing results. But guess what? It's never too late to start. Right? Andy Priscilla talks about this a lot. It's one day or day one, your choice. Make today day one.
there's an old, I don't know if it's a old Chinese, Japanese proverb or where it came from, but there's an old saying, when's the best time to plant a tree? And that the answer is probably like 20 years ago. Second best time is right now. And I think that's the key to this as we're starting this off, is whatever you wish you had started last week, last month, a year ago, whatever, like the best time to start it, if you haven't already started it, is right now. Get after it. Go
Absolutely.
right now.
And that's, it's that movement, that momentum is the most important component, right? We were talking earlier about goals for next year, right? Everybody wants to talk about goals and vision boards and all of the like, right? And those are all important pieces, but they're nothing without movement. If you're not working on in your goals, you're never going to achieve them. Right? I can set a goal that I'm going to be in the best shape of my life next year. But if I don't go to the gym, how the hell am I ever going to achieve that? I can set the greatest revenue goal for my organization and envision that number, and that's gonna change the direction of my company. But if we don't do the right things and put the right effort in the right places to achieve that, how am I ever going to get there? How do I know what those right things are? Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's just that movement. Other times it's breaking that goal down into bite-sized chunks. But what it really comes down to is movement and working on and in those goals.
When you talk about the like doing the work and doing the right things and understanding what the right things are, I think there's kind of like where you went with that. There's two paths to it. There's the right things, like this is the right thing that I should be doing right now. and this is the path I need to go to achieve this goal. And on the other side of it, there are times where there's multiple right things that you could do. There's not just one path to get there, but to your point, just pick a path and go. We wait sometimes so long to get started because we're dialed in on I need to get the right path. Sometimes screw the path. Just start taking action and start moving. And then you'll figure out where you need to go from there.
Well, and that's the thing, right? That path might end before you ever achieve your goal. Then what? Right? We have to build resiliency into our lives. And that happens through that movement, right? By just taking those steps, by putting one foot in front of the other, right? The proverbial one foot in front of the other. Just by doing those things, we understand what options there are out there, right? I might choose option one to go down to achieve my goal, and that path might end. I have to have enough resilience. Do I need to go all the way back to the starting point? Or is there a way that I can get over to path B through the woods?
I think there are times too where you need to take, and I just did this the other day. You need to deconstruct a little bit where you want to go. So almost like work backwards. So I was sitting around the other day and thinking about Orange Ball and just kind of some of the revenue targets we have for next year and kind of where we want to go. And one of the things I came up with was there's like a number we want to hit, right? But the problem with that number is it's big enough that I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there. But when I broke it down into if this is the number I want to get to, here's what it looks like on a monthly basis. Now it goes back to those bite-sized chunks you were talking about. All right, from a bite-sized chunk perspective, how could I get to this number? And then what activities, like we're talking about, what activities would lead me there? And I think it's hard because you can't control all the activities. There's going to be a lot of unexpected things that come. But if you deconstruct it, at least it starts to get you on a path where you can see some of the steps you need to take. And you don't need to know the whole path. We've talked about that in the past. But at least now I know some of the steps I need to take to move in that direction.
Well, and I would challenge anybody listening to even break it down farther than that. Right? From a sales perspective, it's always about breaking it down to the lowest common denominator. And that comes down to what is your typical close ratio? And understanding what activity do I need to generate in order to close X amount of deals that generate X amount per month, that generate X per amount per quarter, and ultimately gets me to my annual goal. That approach can be broken down in any goal that we set forth, right? Lowest common denominator. Break it down to what is it that I really, truly need to focus on and get laser focused on that activity. Goes to the point of you were mentioning earlier about, the number of goals. Right? People want to throw all these massive goals out there. How can you achieve 6, 7, 8 goals for yourself in a year and be successful? I don't think it's possible.
You can't. You can't focus on 6, 7, 8 things at one time and be really good at all of them. Where if you break it down, this is something I've learned the hard way over years of trying to set goals. If you break it down into 1, 2, 3 things you're going to work on at a time, and even 3 sometimes is too many. Maybe it's 1 or 2. If you can dial it in and get really focused on the small number of things you actually want to accomplish, there's going to be time later to add the other things. Like you can, in 3 months, switch it up and work on the next 3 things, whatever it's going to be. But you got to get laser focused on what you want and put your energy toward that. If there's 6 things and you're dividing your energy between 6 directions, you're going to have a really hard time achieving anything or doing anything well. You might be good at a handful of things, but you're never going to be great at any of them. You're not going to achieve what you want.
No, and I can tell you from past experience, what's going to happen is you're going to get frustrated. And every single one of those 6 goals is going to go by the wayside. And you're not going to achieve any of them. So what's better? Picking 1 thing that I can focus on or 6 that I do mediocre? I know for me, the answer is like, I'm going to get laser focused on 1 or 2 things.
And whatever that 1 or 2 things is, it's got to be your one or two things. Like there's a lot of times where we get stuck working on other people's goals for us. Like there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of paths we can go down, and then there's this pressure we get from other people sometimes, like, hey, this is what I want for you, or this is the direction I want you to go. And so then we start working on goals that aren't necessarily our own. Maybe it's a spouse's goal, maybe it's somebody that we work with, a friend, whoever, some family member who thinks they know what's best for us, and they're going to give us like this direction on what our goal should be. That direction can be helpful from time to time, but it can also lead us to try and work on a goal that we actually don't care about. And if we don't care about it and we're not personally invested in it and we're doing it for somebody else, there's a really good chance we're not going to achieve it. So,
yeah. And I think that leads into a bigger conversation, that really understanding and getting to the root of who you are. Because the reality is those goals that somebody else is setting for you 99% of the time aren't going to align. And if you're listening to those, then I think you're in the wrong group of people, personally. Like we're not living somebody else's life here, right? We're living our own life. And our own life starts, yes, there's going to be people in our life that we love and hold dear. But that all starts with understanding who you are and where you are today, right? And things are going to change on that front. They certainly have for me. And those priorities have changed for me. But knowing who I am allows me to make those decisions on my goals and what I'm going to do to achieve those goals much easier. But you got to go through that effort. And that's a bigger conversation that we should get into, further after the first of the year.
well, something you said there, like sometimes those people who are trying to guide our goals are people that love us and that we love. An example of that. So I used to be the scoutmaster of a Boy Scout troop, and I had a kid in this Boy Scout troop. He was like 16, 17 years old, and he was working toward Eagle, and he wanted to become an Eagle Scout. Or better yet, his mom wanted him to become an Eagle Scout because the path to make Eagle required a lot of hard work. And he was starting to bump up against the age brackets of like the amount of time he had to get this done. Things were starting to tighten up on him. And he's a high school kid. He's got work, he's got football, he's got all of his stuff. He's having to make some choices, right? So at one point, I sat down with him and I asked him, like, is this something you really want to do? Because if you do, I'm going to help you get there. And I know what the path looks like to get there. I can help you get this done. But I need to know that you really want it. And his response was, well, my mom wants it. And that was the end of the conversation. And I think in a really positive way, but I told him, I'm like, dude, I love the fact that you want to do this for your mom. And I love the fact that your mom wants this for you, but that's not the reason to do it. And in that instance, your mom's not going to get to wear the badge on her shirt. Like you're not going to achieve this for your mom. Your mom's not going to be an Eagle Scout. You are. And if you want it, I'll help you get it. But you got other things you want. You should go chase those things.
And that also that story brings up a great topic for me. And that is like enjoying the process, right? It's not the goal. I mean, celebrating achieving the goal is great, right? That's the ultimate, cherry on the top of the sundae, right? But you got to enjoy the process of getting there. And I don't think that you can enjoy that process as much if it's not your goal. If you're comparing yourself to somebody else's, or you're trying to achieve your goal for somebody else, right? In that case, his mom. It's really hard to enjoy that process if you're doing it for somebody else other than for yourself. And the only way that we can really be successful is to enjoy that process. Because most goals don't just magically happen in 12 months or 6 months Sometimes there's goals that last years. Man, if that's your goal, like, I have a goal to be in shape, be able to get down on the floor when God blesses me with grandkids someday. I want to be able to get down on the floor, play with my grandkids, and be able to get back up off the floor and have fun doing it and be in the shape and the ability to be able to do that. I want to be able to take long distance cross-country motorcycle trips. You got to be in decent shape in order to do that. Those goals are long lasting, year after year after year. It's the process. Enjoying that process of being at the gym every morning. Have I stumbled this past year on that? Absolutely. We all do, right? Was part of that, as you and I discussed, due to potential plateau? Probably. But the reality is the last 3 months, I've been back at it every day. And the progress surprises even myself. Like I'm chipping away at that goal faster than I had originally thought it was going to be. And that's all from embracing the process and enjoying that and enjoying the workout every day. I have enjoyment again in it, which I think has been probably the biggest driver. Your question earlier was, well, what is it? It's the enjoyment. It's having the conversation every morning. It's the laughter. It's enjoying the process. That's all part of it for me. Makes it go by faster.
When you talk about process, there's a couple interesting things that happen with that. So first of all, process, there's going to be challenges along the way. Like go back to the gym example. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have stuff that happens along the way that maybe causes you to stop or slow down or pull back a little bit. That happens. But the other thing you mentioned, I think that's important, is plateaus, because every goal we try to achieve, it's going to come with challenges, but many of them also come with a plateau where you start off working, maybe you don't see anything. Then all of a sudden you start to see some progress and you're like, oh, this is pretty awesome. And then you hit the plateau and all of a sudden you're not seeing the same progress you started with. Things start to slow down. And this isn't just at the gym. Like I've seen it in business. I've seen it personally. We have those moments where things plateau. You don't just like build and it's just straight up, right? And so that plateau thing, sometimes plateau can be boring. Sometimes it's not fun. Sometimes it's that thing that makes you want to quit because now I'm not seeing results and if we get too tied only to seeing results and not to the journey, then when we hit that spot, we either slow down or we stop. But breaking through the plateau and sticking with it in the middle of plateau, and knowing when you have to make some shifts and maybe you have to tweak a couple of things and when you just have to keep going, I think is key to that.
I think plateaus 98% of the time are our own fault. It's something that we are doing in the process that is causing the plateau. And I'll give you an example. You think of these sports athletes, right? And, somebody's really good and they go and sign a massive contract. What happens the following year? They typically suck. They fall into a little bit of a slump. And that's all mindset, right? They think, oh, I've achieved it. I've gotten there. I've achieved the goal. I don't have to work so hard anymore. Guess what? Once you get there, I think you got to work twice as hard. It comes back to the process. It comes back to enjoying that process. We are our own worst enemy when it comes to goals and plateaus. Plateaus are our own doing. They're in our heads 9 times out of 10. If you're in the gym and you're hitting a plateau, guess what? It's time to move up. It's time to step up. It's time to push a little harder. It's time to raise the bar, raise the intensity. If you're hitting a plateau in your business, it's time to increase the intensity of your marketing campaigns, of your sales campaigns. right? Maybe it's a change, a tweak, something that you need to do. Make those changes. Again, it's about the movement. You can push through those plateaus, but it's the ability to recognize them and be able to push through them.
And I think the ability to be comfortable with change. I think it's easy to sit in the same stuff you've always done because it's what you know and it's not uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. So when you start to try to break a plateau and you're like, okay, I'm going to have to change some things, you have to commit to changing them. And you have to go into that knowing this is going to be different than what it was last week or last month. And it's not going to feel the same at first. I'm going to have to do some things differently. And this applies to your marriage. Like maybe your marriage is plateaued. You got to do some things different. Maybe it's raising.
Take her on a date.
Right. Spend some time with her. Like maybe it's your kids. Maybe your kids, you've plateaued with your kids. We've talked about this. My kids are 17. They're getting ready to launch. And I'm looking at this going, okay, we maybe had a little bit of plateau, but I don't want to end on plateau. So I'm going to start doing some things different. I'm going to be really intentional about what I'm doing. It's at work. It's with clients. It's all the stuff we do.
Find out what gets them jazzed up and do those activities. With your kids, right? What is it now that they enjoy, right? And go do that activity with them.
Same with your spouse.
Totally.
What jazzes them up? And that means just this example, the kids and the spouse example, it means not being selfish and making it all about you and what you want to do. Because there's times where what they want to do is not what you want to do. But if you want to break the plateau, you're going to have to do some different stuff and it might be uncomfortable. Just do it.
Right. Find the path. You can't find the path standing there looking around. It will never become apparent to you. The path only presents itself when you start to walk.
And it's only in the walking that you can see what's up around the next corner, up over the next ridge. Like you got to be moving to see those things. And it's not until you start taking action, you start moving, that you're going to see what's coming up and what the next opportunity is going to be. Absolutely. But standing still.
Absolutely. You've been out in the woods before. You get out in the woods and you stop and you look around. It all looks the same until you start moving. Then that path becomes a little more clear. Oh, there was a path over there, right? But I never saw it when I was standing 100 yards from it. But I get within 10 yards of it, and now it becomes clear. It's the same thing in life, man.
Well, and there's a reason, like now all of a sudden you're on the path and you're moving and you start to climb and you get to some of these elevated spots. There's a reason a lot of executive coaching firms have the pictures of somebody standing on the mountaintop looking out over the ridge or out over the wide open spaces. You're going to have to do some work and get to these elevated spots where you can see out and understand what the possibilities are that are in front of you. When you're down low, down in the valley, you can't really see anything other than what's in front of you right here. But when you get higher and you can look back down, you can see out a lot further and you can see what's possible. And it takes work to get there. Your goal, when you first start working on your goal, might be smaller than what it should be based on where you're standing when you set the goal.
Right. And know that you're gonna have to trudge through some crap to get there. I can't always get to the highest elevation easily. Sometimes I got to put in the work to get there, to even find how to climb the mountain. Put in the work. I guess that's really what comes down to it, right? And we talk a lot about that on here over the last 3 years. It's about the work. It's about putting in the work. It's about putting in the work, whether you're, working on your relationships, your business, your personal existence. It's all work. You got to put it in. You can't just float through life and expect that everything's going to happen for you. And it ain't going to, and if you do that, it's not going to be very rewarding. For me, the work has been the rewarding part. Feeling satisfaction for the work that you put in to help you get to your goals. That's, again, coming back to it. It's the process. Enjoying that process, enjoying the work. That's where the satisfaction is.
You take pro athletes, you take Kobe, Michael Jordan, you take Phelps, and you start to talk about their stories. And what you see a lot of times is, and Kobe talked about this a lot, is you would work and you'd get to a championship and you'd win the championship. And the next day, nobody cared. Like you were on the peak for a little bit, but the next day it was back to doing the work, because you didn't get to keep the championship forever. You'd have to move on to the next thing. And I think that's like, if we get too laser focused on, I'm going to achieve this goal and the goal is what's going to make me happy. The reality is you're going to achieve the goal and you're going to get a blip of happiness, some little spark, but then it's going to come back down. You're going to be back to normal. And if it's only about achieving the goal, like what you're talking about, the amount of happiness you're going to get out of that is going to be really, really short-lived. If you learn how to love the journey, if you're Kobe, if you learn how to love getting to practice at 4 a.m. in the morning when there's no one else in the gym, if you learn to love the flights, if you learn to love game time, if you learn to love all of it leading up to the championship, that's where the joy and the real connection and the real goodness comes from, is in that.
Right. Because to your point, the achievement of the goal is short-lived. I think about that. I love to cook. And I think about that, right? Often, how often if you love to cook, you get done with your meal and you're like, oh man, like spend all day in the kitchen cooking this meal, and in 20 minutes we're done. Like, it's a little depressing at times. Unless you enjoy that process and you think back of the time that you spent in the kitchen. That's where, for me, that's where the enjoyment. Yes, I enjoy the food and I enjoy sitting down at the table and having that food and the taste of it. But it's the enjoyment in the kitchen that I really love. Short, because that achievement of that goal is short-lived. That dinner time is short compared to how long it took to prepare.
That's the takeaway, you guys. It's figure out how to enjoy the journey. And you've probably heard that before. We're not the first ones that have ever said this, right? Like, and we've been taught it by other people, but both of us have had to learn how to figure this out. And enjoy the journey means enjoy the fun parts and the parts that suck. And you're going to get both. You're going to have challenges. You're going to have highs and lows along the way, but figure out how to enjoy the journey. And as you're setting your goals for the next year, know that each one of them is going to be their own journey.
You will find fulfillment in the movement and fulfillment in the journey. I guarantee you. And with that, you all know what to do. Make it a great day and get after it.
As always, these are great conversations, and I'm excited to start the new year with you, man.
See you all in 2024.
Later.
That wraps it up for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the Grit Meets Growth tribe. And thanks for growing along with us and being part of this journey together. If you know someone who needs to hear the conversation we had today, please share it. If you got something out of this conversation, please leave us a review. And finally, if you want to make sure you don't miss future episodes, just remember to subscribe. We're thankful for each and every one of you. And as my co-host and good friend Chris Cathers always says, make it a great day.